Okay, so the last video was around the prelude to fundamental analysis where we did a two-stage model. Now we will be doing a three-stage model. So the data that was given was the company has declared a dividend of 5 rupees per share. The growth in the first phase, which lasted 4 years or is going to last 4 years, the dividend growth is expected to be 12% annual. Next 4 years, 8% annual, and thereafter 4%. And the expected return of the shareholders in this case is 18%. So again, we should always start by drawing a timeline and break up the problem into different parts. In this case, there will be 3 parts. So year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and thereafter. For the first 4 years, you have the growth rate which is equal to, so this is the first 4 years. What kind of a phase is this? This is a definite phase. This is also the next 4 years is also a definite phase, and thereafter we will have the indefinite phase. Why indefinite? Because the time frame is not really specified. Is it okay? Now we will start always stage by stage. So if you take the last stage first, or you can start from the first stage also. So put down your years. You have 1 to 8. And always put down your cash flows. The cash flows are in the form of dividends. So today's dividend is 5, right? So I'm going to take next year's will be 5 into 1 plus 12%. 12% higher. This will continue for how many years? 4 years. Next one will be 5.6 into 1 plus 12% again. And this continues for 4 years. Then, since this is the annuity is growing at 4, the annuity is growing at 12% annual for 4 years. We will first find out the present value of growing annuity for the first phase, also using the formula. So present value of growing annuity, what is the formula? Which I had mentioned last time. It will be dividend for the first year into 1 minus 1 plus the first phase growth divided by 1 plus the expected return, the whole thing to the power of 4 years divided by the expected return minus the first phase growth, which is 17 rupees and 58 paise. If you apply the formula, now if you do this, let's see what happens when you use the tabular approach. So discounting factors is 1 by 1 plus r raised to the power of n. Remember, discounting factors are applied to future values to arrive at the present values. So we will do that. And we will see what is the value that you are getting. Now, if you take a summation of all this, if you take a summation of these cash flows, what are you getting as the answer? 17.58. Right? So whether I use the tabular approach or I use the formula that I had told you, it will lead to the same valuation, which you can see on the screen also. The valuation is the same. Now we will do it for the second phase, which lasts between year 5 to year 8. Again, since it is a definitive time frame, so we will use the present value of the growing annuity. So we will do the second phase now. In the second phase, the dividends are expected to grow at what rate? 8%. And this is going to go for how many years? 4 years, until the 8th year. Okay. And we take down the discounting factors. And now what we will do is we will do this is for the first phase. Now we will do the same thing for the second phase also. But here we will start with PBGA 4. What will be PBGA 4? It will be A5. It will be A5 into dividend for the 5th year into 1 minus 1 plus growth rate of 8% divided by 1 plus expected return. The whole thing again to the power of how many years? 4 years divided by R minus G. Okay. This is 25 rupees 34 paise. But 25 rupees 34 paise is at the end of which year? 4th year. So you will have to bring it to the current, right? Which you will do by multiplying with the discounting factor, which will be the 4th year discounting factor. So you get 13.07. Now please look at these values here. ये देखो इधर. The first phase valuation gave you 17.58. Now if I take a sum of these four, it will be summation of these four is also going to give you 13.07, which is the same value that you are getting here. Because I'll tell you. Because this PVGA in the second phase, it starts from the beginning of the 5th year, end of the 4th year. So it will be PVGA 4, not PVGA 0. So that is the present value of growing annuity at the end of year 4. But you have to bring it now to time 0. So you'll have to again discount it by multiplying with the 4th year discounting factor. Third phase is nothing but, what is the third phase? Forever, for which we'll use the Gordon's constant growth model. P8 will be D9. What is D9? D8 into 1 plus constant growth divided by KE minus G, which is 18% minus the constant growth by percent. Now here also, this is P8. So we have to bring this to the present value by multiplying with the 8th year discounting factor. Now here you don't need any discounting at all. Now when you sum it all up, when you sum it all up, you should get the answer 51 rupees and 81 paise. This is the intrinsic value for the share. 51 rupees and 81 paise. Now you can also play with this कि हमारा ये वैल्यूएशन कितना अच्छा हो सकता है या कितना बुरा हो सकता है. Okay, equity research analysts often do that. So what I will do, since I made a model here, please pay attention. I can create a scenario. Please don't miss this. I can create a scenario here. I can write first phase growth, best case. What is the first case? First phase growth, best case. ये आपका यहाँ पे first phase growth है. Now, I can say that the first phase growth is 15%. Then add another scenario. First phase growth, worst case. So worst case, again, this is the place. I can take it as 9%. Then I can do second phase growth, best case. This is where my second phase growth happens. And I can take it, let's say, as 10%. Then second phase growth, worst case. This is where my second phase growth happens. And I can take it to be as, let's say, 6%. Then another scenario for perpetual growth, best case. Perpetual growth, let's say, is 5%, best case. This is the place where you have the perpetual growth. I keep it as 5%, assume. Here, perpetual growth, worst case. So I'm just creating different scenarios. Let's say here, my worst case is 3%. Now I have got 6 different scenarios here, best case, worst case. So I can actually see the scenarios with the result. I just want the result to be the intrinsic value of the share. And I press OK. The moment I press OK, I will get the answers of those 6 different scenarios. Now, please pay attention on this one. If my growth rate, the first phase growth rate is 15 and not 12, my intrinsic valuation will go from 51.8 to 56.8. But if my growth is 9 and not 12, it will drop to 47. Second phase growth, if it is not 8%, if it is 10%, intrinsic goes up to 54. If it is 6%, it drops down to 49.72. If my perpetual growth goes up to 5%, intrinsic goes up to 53.6. If it drops to 3%, intrinsic valuation drops to 50.2. So after finding out the intrinsic valuation of the shares, I can also create a range. And that range will tell you, depending upon whether the best case turns out to be true or the worst case turns out to be true or something in the interim, you will know where your intrinsic valuation can lie. Right? And the second part of the question was, what was the end use of this intrinsic valuation? This is to compare with the current market price. If the current market price is higher, the stock is overvalued because there is a tendency for market prices to converge towards intrinsic value and we can take a short position on the stock. Whereas if the current market price is lower than the intrinsic value, again, the prices will always converge towards intrinsic value. In that case, the stock securities become undervalued and we can take a long position on the stock. So that is the end use of having fundamental analysis for stocks. The difference between the last video and this one was what? The last time around we did a two-stage model. Here we did a three-stage model. The two-stage model had one indefinite phase and one definite phase. Here you have two definite phases and one indefinite phase. Okay. Good. Thank you.